Welcome. In this session, I am going to continue discussing about responses to abiotic factors. So, in the last session, I have given a brief introduction on this responses to abiotic factors, and I told you that some organisms are able to maintain a constant internal environment, which means they have achieved homeostasis. Okay, and they are called regulators. They are able to regulate, okay, their internal environment. Of course, it's not possible for an organism to regulate the external factors, so we cannot control the external factors, but organism has the ability to control the internal factors at least. And I also told that majority of organisms were not able to maintain a constant internal environment. Okay, so of course this is because the requirement of energy. So to maintain internal environment, a lot of energy is required. So that is the reason majority of organisms, they simply conform. We also have seen about partial regulators, okay, whose internal environment will show response to certain point, and beyond that it is going to maintain homeostasis, like we have given in case of camel an example. Now in this session, I'll discuss in detail about those regulators. So how the regulators show their mechanisms, I mean, to maintain to achieve the homeostasis. Now here, when we see a very few lower vertebrates, okay, very few lower vertebrates, okay, and invertebrate species, right, and all birds and mammals. So few lower vertebrates, a very few lower vertebrates, and okay, a very few lower invertebrate species, right, and all birds and mammals are able to maintain, okay, a constant internal environment. Okay, so such regulation, especially that regulation, I'm going to talk in terms of uh, two things, that is thermoregulation and another one called osmoregulation. So thermoregulation is maintaining a constant temperature, so that's called thermoregulation. So birds and mammals are able to maintain a constant temperature. And coming to osmoregulation, which means, okay, maintaining water balance, or I say fluid balance. So these organisms, right, the organisms that regulate, they are able to maintain a constant body temperature, and also they are able to maintain the fluid balance of the body. So that is thermoregulation and osmoregulation, right. Apart from this, the remaining all the reptiles, the fishes, amphibians, okay, and majority of invertebrates and the lower vertebrates, all of them are not able to maintain a constant internal environment, or they are not able to achieve homeostasis, right. So here I have given only the organisms that are able to, okay, maintain homeostasis. So very few lower vertebrates, invertebrate species, all birds and mammals were able to show homeostasis in terms of thermoregulation and osmoregulation. And I think already in the last session I told you that the success of mammals is mainly due to their ability to maintain a constant body temperature. So the success of mammals is mainly due to, or mainly their ability to maintain constant body temperature. Means maintain constant body temperature. Say here, I'll take an example of human beings. In case of human beings, human body temperature will be around 37 degrees Celsius. So it will be 37 degrees Celsius here. Okay, and the humans will be maintaining this 37 degrees Celsius mostly. Now if the temperature rises more than this, so what happens, right, the person starts sweating. So if the temperature, so if temperature becomes more than 37 degrees Celsius, then the person shows sweating, and the evaporative effect of that sweat will produce the cooling effect. Okay, and then if the temperature falls below, okay, 37 degrees Celsius, means here I'm talking about the external temperature. So here this is the best temperature. So if the environment is if the ambient temperature is having 37 degrees Celsius, then the person will not be showing any sweating or shivering. So if the temperatures fall down, okay, so here I am just taking 37 degrees Celsius. Of course, if it becomes cooler, say at 10 degrees Celsius, so that is very chilling. Even if it comes to just 26 degrees Celsius, whatever, so I am telling that below 37 degrees Celsius, then what happens is the body shows shivering. The body shivers. So here shivering is a process in which the contraction of muscles takes place. So in shivering there is contraction of muscles occur, and this will generate heat. It generates heat. So contraction of muscles will take place during the shivering, and that generates the heat. Okay, so that our temperature, the body temperature, again comes back or to the normal 37 degrees Celsius. So all the time it will be maintained at that. So in case of sweating here, I told that the evaporative, okay, mechanism brings down body temperature. So brings down the body temperature, that is it brings down to the normal temperature. So this 37 degrees Celsius is the normal body temperature, is the normal body temperature. Okay, so this is how we will be maintaining a constant body temperature here, right? And when coming to the plants, so when coming to the plants, they don't have any such mechanisms to maintain internal environment or the temperature. So no plant has ability to maintain constant temperature. So no plant has ability to maintain, okay, constant temperature here, right? So so I told you that the mammal's success is mainly their ability to maintain constant body temperature. So hence we find almost in all over the planet, right from the North Pole to South Pole. So if you happen to go to do those cooler climatic conditions, you will be showing the process of shivering that tries to generate the heat. And if you go to deserts, so in deserts the sweating will actually make your body to cool down. So this is what about the organisms who regulate their internal environment and are called regulators. Now the organisms who cannot regulate their internal environment, they are called conformers. They are called conformers. Okay, so now when we see here, the majority of organisms, that is, I say 99% of animals and nearly all plants. So 99% of animals and nearly all plants are not able to maintain constant internal environment. So they cannot maintain constant internal environment. So hence they are called the conformers here. Okay, so that is the reason when the ambient temperature increases, their internal temperature also increases. That's what we have seen in the graph. Okay, the internal level and the external level. So when we see this internal level and external level, so in this case you say the internal temperature, you take it, and here external temperature. So when the external temperature rises, the internal temperature also rises. So in that case, these are all the conformers. Okay, they simply conform. So this is the ambient temperature. The body temperature depends on ambient temperature. Ambient temperature, which means the temperature that surrounds the organism. So that temperature, when it rises or decreases, you will see if the temperature is decreasing, then the internal temperature of that organism also starts decreasing. And in case of aquatic organisms, so in case of aquatic organisms, right, their body temperature, so their body temperature, or whatever the osmotic concentration, all they are going to change depending on their ambient conditions here. Okay, so in aquatic organisms, what happens is the osmotic concentration of the body fluids, concentration of body fluids, the osmotic concentration of body fluids, okay, is going to change with that of so changes with or changes depending on the ambient, depending on ambient air, means the air that surrounds that organism here, and then the water osmotic concentration, water osmotic concentration. Okay, and uh, here that what's this osmotic concentration? So here in case of these animals, when we see here, so say suppose a fish living in fresh water, it will have a problem of endoosmosis, and if it lives in case of marine water, it will have the problem of exoosmosis. Okay, so depending on the difference in the concentrations between its ambient and internal environment. So when we see here, say this is the fresh water, so where you will find more number of free water molecules, and in case of say fish, right, so in this case there will be less free water molecules, less free water molecules. So hence the water that is from the fresh water, I mean from the river or pond, it's going to move into its body. So that process, we call it endosmosis, can take place. And we know that when we have studied the osmosis, we say that the water moves from a region of higher water potential to a region of lower water potential. So this is what the animals who live in fresh water face the problem of endoosmosis. And say suppose the fishes that live in marine water, in case of that, the fish will be having more free water molecules, will have more free water molecules, and in the sea, or they will be having less free water molecules. So in this case, the water will move out of the fish, into the sea, and this is called exosmosis. It's called exosmosis. So even aquatic organisms have this problem. So we think that organisms that live in the water will not have any problems, but they have their own problems, right? So in the aquatic organisms, the osmotic concentration of body fluids will all depend on the ambient air osmotic, water osmotic concentration, etc. Right? Now the question comes that why most of the organisms are not able to maintain a constant internal environment, which I have already told you in the last session. The reason also I have given you in the last session is that maintaining a constant internal environment is energetically expensive. So maintaining a constant internal environment. So maintaining a constant internal environment is energetically expensive. Means it requires a lot of energy to maintain a constant internal environment. So now let's see how maintaining constant internal environment is energetically expensive. As I said that it is very much true in case of smaller animals. So these smaller animals like hummingbirds and sheep. So these sheep are mammals. So here we know that heat loss or heat gain is a function of surface area. What we mean by that, function of surface area. So here you have to keep in mind that if there is more surface area, then more heat loss, right? Less surface area, then there will be less heat loss. So that's I can give you an example of the saucer, with the tea, or a cup with the tea. So when you take the cup, right? So in this case, and then you take a saucer. Now the point is that this is the surface area. So here this is the point where the tea is present inside. Only this much is the surface area, but when you take a saucer, you can see the surface area is very high. Now for the tea in the cup to get cooled down, it takes time. Then if you pour it into the saucer, you can see that it becomes very cool, and you might have seen many people pouring the tea into the saucer to cool it down quickly and then drink it. So that's what. So as I said, the surface area, if there is an increase in the surface area, there will be increase in heat loss. So lesser surface area, the less heat loss. So in this case, there is less surface area, so hence heat loss is less. So hence it remains in the heat condition for a long time when compared to the tea in the saucer. Now in these smaller animals, the problem is that they have larger surface areas. And smaller volumes. So when compared with their body volume to the surface area, they have very much large surface area. If there is large surface area, then heat loss is very high. The heat loss is very high, but the volume is smaller. The heat generation depends on the volume. The bigger the volume, the more the heat generation, right? So that's what when you see in case of polar bear, so whatever that animals that live in these polar regions, they tend to be bigger in size, because the bigger they are, the more the heat generation. And when compared with their surface areas, so when the volume increases, simultaneously the surface area will not increase. So hence in them, when compared with the body volume and the surface area, so they have a bigger body volumes and lesser surface area, so that they lose less heat. Okay, and that is the reason why the polar animals, whether it is south or north, whatever, they tend to be bigger in size, so that their volume will help in production of more heat. In case of these hummingbirds and sheeps, so their volume is very less, hence the heat generation is very less. Okay, and their surface areas are larger when compared to the volume. Hence, to compensate the quantity of heat loss, they need to generate lot, which requires a lot of energy. So hence that's why, so I have mentioned that as this maintaining the constant internal environment, like if we take this temperature, which is energetically expensive, and it is very much true in case of these smaller animals. So because of this situation, right, I hope this part is clear, right? So why okay, many animals do not regulate body temperature? We understood that it requires a lot of energy. Okay, hence they, as they cannot generate a lot of energy, so they simply conform. And very few group of animals, the birds and mammals, are able to maintain a constant internal environment. Okay, now if in a geographical area, in a location, when the conditions become unfavorable, and the conditions become unfavorable, say suppose it became too cool or became too hot, then the plants don't have any other way to get out of that location. So either they need to die, and before that they may produce some kind of structures which can withstand that unfavorable conditions. And when the conditions come back, those structures were able to germinate and produce, okay, new plants. Whereas in case of animals, they have the ability to move away from that location. If it becomes very cool, they will move to some other location, right? So let's see, if the stressful conditions, okay, are present for a longer time. So if the stressful external conditions, if stressful external conditions, okay, are localized, conditions are localized, or okay, present for a short period of time. I'm sorry, I think I said long period. No, we'll take a short period of time, because for this short period of time they get out of this location, and then once the conditions at that point, if it becomes favorable, they are going to come back. Okay, so if stressful external conditions are localized or present for a short period of time, then the organisms have two options. The organisms will be having two options. So one, it is migrate, which means to move away from that unfavorable condition. Or if they don't have that chance to move away from that unfavorable condition, they need to simply get suspend, means remain in the same location and then reduce their all metabolic activities and wait till the external conditions become favorable. So now let's look at that. Okay, first option, migrate. So if the conditions become unfavorable for a short period of time, then the organisms living in that area have options to migrate or remain in the same place but get suspend. So here, it is just like one example as mentioned in the textbook, that in the winter seasons, or in hot climatic conditions, so you need to move into cooler regions. Okay, so many people like to go from the hotter regions to cooler regions in case of summer. Okay, moving to near to the into the Jammu and Kashmir, when during the summers the conditions are very much cool there, whereas it's very hot in case of South India during the summer conditions. Right, so that is, I think, one example they have mentioned in the textbook. Okay, that's what moving from the Delhi to Shimla. Shimla is a cooler region, or a Ooty. So these are cooler regions even in the summer periods. Now the birds. So here the birds and many other organisms have the ability to migrate. Okay, so here we have one famous example for this, that every winter to the Park Colorado National Park. So this Colorado National Park is located, okay, in Bharatpur of Rajasthan state. So located in Bharatpur of Rajasthan state. So to this park, many birds from Siberia are going to visit. Okay, so this park is visited by migratory birds, from Siberia. So Siberia is a location in Russia. So that is almost to the North Pole, where in the winter the conditions become very very cool. It results in sub-zero conditions. So say suppose minus 10 degrees Celsius or 20 degrees Celsius, and the birds, to avoid that unfavorable conditions, they move away from that location and come to India, right, to this Colorado National Park, where what you say, the temperatures are much favorable. So we call them hospitable areas, means where they can live without any problem. So here in winter seasons in Siberia, the conditions are very cool, going the temperatures to minus 10 or 20 degrees Celsius. So from that point, the birds, the migratory birds will come to this Colorado National Park. Okay, that's about the migration or migrate, and many other animals also do. This is just an example which I have mentioned here. Okay, so many animals will move away even if there are very hot conditions. Not only in cool conditions, moving from cooler to warmer conditions, and then moving from hotter to again warmer conditions, so can take place. And second one, we'll see about suspend. So I told you that if the organisms are not able to move from that location, so like this bacteria, fungi and lower plants, we'll say about the suspend. So in case of bacteria, fungi, and in case of lower plants, right, So these are not able to move from that location. So hence what they are going to do, they will form thick walled spores. They form thick walled spores. Okay, so when you see that spore, so it will be very much thick. So this is the wall of spore. So inside will be the organism which will be able to withstand. So these thick walled spores are able to withstand unfavorable conditions. They are able to withstand unfavorable conditions. Okay, so as long as the conditions are not favorable, okay, the spores will protect the organism inside, and once the conditions become okay favorable, the spores will germinate and then give rise to the new organisms. So that's what we see in case of these bacteria, fungi, and lower group of plants. Now when come to the higher plants, when coming to the higher group of plants, in higher plants, so in higher plants they are going to produce seeds and some okay vegetative structures. So like tubers we have studied. So this even though in case of this tuber, say suppose root tubers, the root tubers will be loaded with a lot of reserve food materials and all, and if the conditions become so hot, even the whole plant on the top of the soil dies, the root will survive. So that tuber will survive okay in the ground for a very very long time, and once the conditions become favorable, this root tuber will start sprouting. Okay, so that's what we see even in case of the stem tubers, like in case of potatoes. Okay, and so now in case of higher group of plants, when the seasons okay even before the winter arises, so or the hot or the summer comes up, what they do, they're going to produce the seeds or some vegetable some vegetative reproductive structures. Okay, so are going to yes, reproductive okay some vegetative reproductive structures, they are able to help the tide over unfavorable conditions. So these help to tide over unfavorable conditions. So once the conditions become favorable, the seeds germinate, and even the vegetative reproductive structures, they are going to germinate and produce new young ones. And they do it by reducing their metabolic activity. So they are going to reduce that metabolic activity okay a lot. So by reducing their metabolic activity. So when you see a seed, it looks like it is completely dead, but in fact no. So and you think that there is no metabolic activity is taking place inside the seed. It is not like that. There is metabolic activity going on inside the seed, but it is okay very very much reduced. Okay, if it is completely dead, then you cannot expect a new plant developing from that seed. So by reducing their metabolic activity, so they go into a state of dormancy. A state of dormancy. I hope in the first year you studied about dormancy. There are certain factors that involve in making them to be dormant during unfavorable conditions, and the favorable conditions like the favorable conditions when they return, like the moisture and the temperature. The moisture and temperature, what that seed or that vegetative reproductive structure want. So if that are favorable, then it starts okay germinating or producing new plants, right? So that is in case of bacteria, fungi, lower plants and higher plants. Then what about in case of animals? So if that animal is not able to move away from that unfavorable conditions, then what they are going to do. So here, in case of animals, in animals, okay, so they will be going for something like hibernation. So this is called the winter sleep, like we see in case of bears. So we see in case of bears going for hibernation, okay. And in case of some fish and snails, like this aestivation, so that's called the summer sleep, will be seen in case of snails and fishes, right? They will be hiding, or moving away from that hot climatic conditions, and they reduce their metabolic activity and take rest all through that summer period. So that's we call estivation, right? So this is different from what you have studied in morphology of flowering plants. That is different, okay. So here estivation, which means the summer sleep, it's a escape in time to uh, get less effect of that unfavorable conditions, right? And now in case of smaller organisms or smaller animals, much smaller animals, many zooplankton, many zooplankton organisms. So these zooplankton are microscopic animals. So these are microscopic animals, okay. So they are microscopic, and they float or drift, okay, or swim weakly in the waters. So these zooplanktons in the lakes and ponds, so they will be seen in lakes and ponds. So many zooplankton which are present in lakes and ponds, that they are going to enter into a condition called diapause. So they enter into diapause condition. So this diapause is what we say a stage of suspended development. So diapause is a stage of suspended development. Okay, so they are not going to show or reduce that activity, metabolic activity, and remain in that lakes and ponds till the conditions become favorable. So that's what when the conditions are unfavorable and the organisms are not able to move away from that unfavorable condition area, so the organisms need to show various types of mechanisms like that hibernation, okay, estivation, or some organisms will enter into this suspended development stage called diapause. So that's all about the responses to abiotic factors. Now we will see about adaptations. So how the organisms adapt to live in their environments. So let's see about these adaptations, right? So here adaptations are there are alternatives that are available to the organisms which help them to live in extreme environmental conditions. So these adaptations help the organisms to live in extreme environmental conditions, to live in extreme environmental conditions. So if the conditions are very hot, very cool, okay, or it has become too much waterlogged or whatever, a variety of environmental conditions, in that how the organisms are able to cope up with the situations here. Now, so let's see what actually is this adaptations. So this adaptation is, it can be any morphological. It can be morphological, means there is a change in the body, okay, internal, external, whatever. So that's a morphological change, okay. And there may be physiological. The adaptation can be physiological. So the physiology of the body, changes in the physiology of the body, and then it can be even behavioral change. So it can be morphological change, adaptation, means physiological change can also be seen, and behavioral change is also. So all these morphological, physiological and behavioral changes that enables the organism. So these enable the organism to survive and reproduce in that environment. So enable the organism to survive and uh, enable them to reproduce in that environment, right? So as I said, morphological changes means their external appearance. They may develop certain structures, like we see in case of Arctic fox. So we see the tail is become shorter, the legs become shorter, the ears become shorter. So it means that it reduced its surface area to minimize heat loss. So those are, morphological changes. And physiological changes, of course, that I will be discussing in detail, like in case of kangaroo rats in deserts. They will be usually not getting much water, but they satisfy with the water that they obtain in their metabolic activity. That part I will discuss shortly. And behavioral changes means migration. So they move from one place to another place to temporarily avoid that unfavorable conditions. So now let's look at various adaptations in organisms. So first one, let's look at in case of animal called kangaroo rat. Okay, so this kangaroo rat, its scientific name is Dipodomys. Okay, spectabilis. So its scientific name is Dipodomys. Okay, spectabilis. So this one lives in North American deserts. So lives in North American deserts. So this one lives in North American deserts. Okay, and here we know that deserts means the water availability will be very less. In fact, it is not worried about the availability of water at all. That is the kangaroo rat. So here the kangaroo rat will depend on the water that is produced in. So it depends on water that is produced as a byproduct during its internal fat oxidation. Okay, so it's going to depend on the water that is produced as a byproduct during its internal fat oxidation. So hence it need not worry about the availability of water. Okay, then it also has ability to concentrate urine. So it has ability to concentrate urine. So how it's able to concentrate urine, because the kidneys have the nephrons with a long loop of Henleys. So they are going to have, okay, kidneys have nephrons with long loop of Henle. So we know that this loop of Henle is meant for concentrating urine. So this kangaroo rat is able to concentrate urine. It means that it is going to eliminate more solutes than water, right? So that's what I say, ability to concentrate urine because of having a very long loop of Henleys. Right. Next, coming to desert plants. In desert plants, what kind of adaptations they show? So these plants, I mean, many desert plants. So many desert plants, okay, they have sunken stomata. So they have sunken stomata, okay, and also they have thick cuticle. Thick cuticle, have sunken stomata. They also have a thick cuticle on surface of leaves. Now both these conditions, that is having sunken stomata and thick cuticle, will reduce transpiration. I hope we know the transpiration is loss of water in the form of water vapor. So loss of water in the form of water vapor is called transpiration. So they have sunken stomata. So when we see the sunken stomata, so it's seen something like this. The stomata will be located in pits. So here are the stomata located. Right, and even you will find hairs. So that also will help in reducing the transpiration taking place. So these are sunken stomata, and they also have, you can see here, the presence of thick cuticle. So this is thick cuticle. The thicker the cuticle, the less is transpiration. So thicker the cuticle, lesser is transpiration. Okay, so both those the morphological changes, like the presence of this sunken stomata and then thick cuticle on the surface of leaves in case of desert plants, are going to reduce the transpiration process. And they also have a mechanism called CAM pathway. They have CAM pathway. So here the CAM stands for crassulacean acid metabolism. So there is a CAM pathway. So here the point is that if these desert plants like to take carbon dioxide during daytime, so they need to open stomata to take that carbon dioxide. If they open stomata, they are going to lose water. We know that stomata are responsible for the process of transpiration. Now we know how much important is water. Every drop of water in case of desert is very important. So the desert plants don't like to take carbon dioxide during daytime, and they keep their stomata closed during daytime, and they open the stomata during night time when the transpiration is very less. So it's not like that in the night time transpiration will not at all take place. It can take place, but it will be very less when compared with the daytime, especially in case of deserts. uh, Now what they are going to do in CAM pathway, the plants will take up carbon dioxide during night time. So they take up the carbon dioxide during night time and store in acid form. They are going to store in acid form. Okay, so this was first actually observed in a family members of this Crassulacea. So because of that, the name Crassulation acid metabolism. Okay, so during night time they open the stomata, they take the carbon dioxide and store that carbon dioxide in the acid form. That's what the acid metabolism, right? And so that is in this case also this will help in reducing the transpiration or loss of water. So this mechanism helps to reduce loss of water, so that's another mechanism we see in case of desert plants. Now one more point before I end up this session. In case of the desert plants, okay, there will be lot of modifications that take place. So here the leaves are modified into spines. So in case of desert plants, the leaves are modified into spines and the stems, okay, become green. They become green and perform photosynthesis. They perform photosynthesis, okay, and also store water. They also store water. Now because we know that the leaves will be having stomata and are responsible for transpiration, so which results in loss of water, that can be avoided by modifying the leaves into spines, and this will give protection. This will protect the plant from the animals which like to get water in case of deserts, and the stems become green and they perform photosynthesis. So this is another adaptation that we see in case of desert plants. Okay, with this I will end today's session. In the next session I will discuss the remaining adaptations.